So to build on that, and for illustration purposes only, let's say that I had a tremendous opportunity to pastor a church in Atlanta, and we decided to move. And after being gone for several months, let's say that my friends, my closest friends and family would gather here in Pittsburgh. And this group of people that gathered, they are the people that knew me extremely well, right? These are the folks that knew the good and the bad and the ugly, and they begin to share remembrances of me without me there, right? Remember the time that he did this? Remember how he used to love this? Remember how this used to freak him out, right? Maybe they'd share some funny stories and maybe talk about some things I did. But for the sake of this illustration, let's say that the discussion turned very serious, very real, and very honest. And they began to share who I was to them at my core. What might they say? How would they summarize who I really was? How would they remember me? You know, the purpose of this little 2-week series that we've titled Remember Me is it's designed to explore that question. How will we be remembered? Or if I can make it more present tense, how are you thought of currently? So now stay with me, because if I was a lawyer and I was making a case, I'm about to submit an opening sort of argument to you. I believe that much of the way that we will be remembered or perceived is going to go hand in hand with how we have dealt with our brokenness. Now think about it. We are all broken to some degree, right? We're all less than whole. So therefore, what we have done with that or not done with that is what is going to spill out on people. And for those that know you, the closest to you, they are the ones that are sitting in the splash zone. So here is the summary of my opening argument. It says this: what we have done with the broken areas of our life, the pain, the wounds, the struggles, and the disappointments is often directly related to how we are remembered. See, I believe that there is a key piece or two of our makeup that will really go a long way in determining that. So before I jump into what I'll hit this week and next week, let me ask you a question. It's just sort of random. What kind of hand do you think you've been dealt in life? If I were to just ask you, what kind of hand do you think you've been dealt? You know, this many people across all of our campuses, across all of our locations. My guess is there's at least some of you, a portion in this room, that would say, you know, I've been dealt a pretty bad hand. In my hands are cards like the Jack of disappointment, the Ace of betrayal, the Four of abuse. And some of these cards, you know, they're of your own doing. You picked them up when you should have discarded them. However, some of them, like, they're cards that just happen, right? The world has sort of dealt them to you, and you've been forced to do your best, to play the hand that you got. And tragically, too often, I think for folks that would maybe say that, they have been left at times bitter and negative and difficult to please. And consequently, that brokenness is what people experience. It's how they frame their remembrance of you. You know, there's some other folks in this room that if I were to ask you that question, you might say, man, like, I've been dealt a pretty strong hand, actually. You know, in my hand, I've got the king of I've got it all together. I've got the 10 of boast. I've got the queen of how do you like me now, right? You know, and this has left you somehow a little puffed up, a little prideful, right? But if we're really honest, we tend to be able to see those cards in other people's hands, right? A lot more easier than we admit that they are some of the cards that we are playing. However, those closest to you, see, they see that attitude, that pride, and that ego, and it frames their remembrance of you. And in reality, right, we're sometimes throughout our life playing cards from both of those hands, you know, or anything in between, depending largely on the circumstances of the current season of our life that we're in. All I'm trying to point out here is this, that you will be remembered or measured to some degree by the brokenness, by the lack of wholeness that you bring to the closest relationships in your life. So back to my original illustration, if I were in Atlanta and these friends were to gather, how would they remember me? Now, this series is built around what I believe should be at the core of our makeup. And it's what I believe would dramatically shape the way that we are remembered. And today I want to share one, and next week I want to share another one with you. So here is the one I want to discuss with us today. I would hope that those gathered here in Pittsburgh with me gone would remember me this way, that they would remember me grateful, that they would remember me as somebody that was thankful, appreciative, genuinely grateful for the people, the blessings, the ups and downs, and the great God that has graciously walked with me, grateful. Is that like a little bit of a letdown for some of you that I said that? That some of you think, man, I don't know, Scott, that's a little soft. I was sort of hoping you were going to say courageous or fearless. So what you're saying, Scott, is that, what I need to do is say please and thank you more. So stay with me, and you can determine at the end if you think this is a little soft, okay? So let me add just a flurry of sort of statements to my opening argument with you. See if any of these strike a chord with you. I'll put them up on your screens. Sort of this: if you want to be known or remembered by the broken areas of your life, then go through life ungrateful and unappreciative. If you do that, you'll remain bitter and negative or arrogant or prideful. I want to make a case that you will never find healing or be remembered differently until you wrestle with gratitude and gratefulness. Folks, the etymology of the word gratitude is grace, and grace is unconditional love, and I believe that gratitude can and does create space for that kind of unconditional love. Gratitude, being grateful, it opens up your soul to the experiences of love. It opens up your soul to experience the love of God, and opens up your soul that you can love others. So a couple other things if I were going to further my case here a little bit. For those of you that might be clinging to the cards of pride and success, the cards of I have it all together, my guess is you've been spending a lot of your time trying to win, trying to succeed, trying to be right. And when you do that, you miss out on so much of the grace that you've been blessed with. Those holding these cards, they aren't grateful to others. If you're clinging too tightly to those cards, at times you're not grateful to others or even towards God, because honestly, you don't feel like anyone other than yourself really deserves a thank you. Prideful people, they have a really high view of themselves and a really low capacity to love. The more that you try to hold on to how good or how right you are, the less that you will live a life of gratitude. I promise you. On the flip side of that, if you're clinging to the cards of disappointment, of betrayal, your pain and your bitterness, folks, it's blocking God's grace and the love of others into your life. The more you hold on to, well, it's just not fair, or I've been wronged, or what about me, the less that you are going to live a life of gratitude. See, the human soul was never intended to live a life of ungratefulness, right? It was never designed to be a container for pride or for bitterness. I believe with all my heart that if we are going to be remembered well, despite our brokenness, it must begin with cultivating a heart of gratitude. See, the Apostle Paul, he wrote a letter to the church in Philippi. It's the book of the Bible that we call Philippians. And he wrote it from jail. Specifically, most scholars believe that he actually wrote it from a jail in Rome while awaiting a trial before the emperor. The opening arguments of Paul's trial may have been going on at the same time that he was penning the letter to the church in Philippi. The outcome of his life or death hinged on a thumbs up or a thumbs down from the ruthless Emperor Nero. And knowing these circumstances surrounding the time as he's writing this letter, wouldn't you think that Paul could be clinging to the cards of bitterness? This is not fair, is what he could be writing, right? Or he could be clinging to the cards of pride. How dare they? They know who I am. But instead, what he writes is this warm and sweet letter of gratitude and encouragement. You know, his life may have been hanging in the balance, but to the church at Philippi, what he wanted to be remembered as is grateful. The book of Philippians is really a thank you note from Paul to the Philippians. And if you look right in Philippians 1, verse 1, it says this, Paul and Timothy, servants of Christ Jesus, to all the saints in Christ Jesus who are at Philippi with the overseers and the deacons, grace to you and peace from God our Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. I thank my God in all my remembrance of you, always in every prayer of mine, for you all making my prayer with joy because of your partnership in the gospel from the first day until now. So in this letter, what Paul is doing is he's sincerely thanking the church at Philippi, the people there, for three things. And over the next couple minutes, I'm just going to go through these three things that he thanked the church in Philippi for. And here's what I want to see maybe happen. Here's what I've been praying for. This is sort of the application part of this sermon, right here in the beginning. As I go through these, could you examine maybe your own personal gratefulness in these three areas? I went so far as much to leave a blank spot on your outline, on your notes, that as I'm going through these, if someone comes to mind, someone that, oh my goodness, I don't know that I've ever thanked them, or wow, I have not been very grateful about that. Maybe jot a note down in there and follow it up. I would invite right now, you know, the Spirit to just, God to just rest on you and maybe reveal where you are in your own personal gratefulness. So the first one is this, in the text that I just read in those first few verses, he thanked the Philippians for their partnership in the gospel. And the Greek word there for the word partnership is this word koinonia. And it could be translated in many ways. It could mean fellowship, participation, contribution, communion with the gospel. A partnership in the gospel of sharing the good news of Jesus Christ. So when I think about this personally, for me, I always thank and remember a young couple named Bill and Janice Edwards because they shared their life with me, their fellowship with me, and in doing so led me to the Lord. Man, when I think about partnering in the gospel, I think about so many people that have poured into me over my life and shared the gospel with me. Names like Ray Saunders and Wayne Alderson and Stan Ott. Right? People that have just poured in to my life. They participated and contributed to my faith. I would not be standing here partnering in the gospel with you if it was not that there were many people that partnered in the gospel with me. Jesus Christ changed the entire trajectory of my life. And there are a lot of people that partnered in the gospel to helping this broken and angry kid stand up before you here today. Are there folks in your life that have encouraged and partnered with you in Christ that you need to express your gratefulness to, right? Maybe it's your parents or a friend. Maybe it's a youth or church leader. Have you expressed how grateful you are? See, there is something, and I'm going to say this a couple times, different ways, but there is something that opens up our soul to love when we take the time to be grateful. It's medicine for bitterness, for pride, for pain. I really believe that one of the first responsibilities of leadership of the church is to clarify vision. And then our second responsibility is to thank you. So to all of you that are partnering with Northway and freeing people to follow Jesus across all of our campuses, whether that's by presenting the gospel to our kids and our teens and our family ministries, whether that's mentoring a child in Homewood, whether that's going on a mission trip across the world or going across the street and inviting your neighbor to church, thank you. Like seriously, man, I want to be remembered as a grateful person. And I need to get better at this myself. Thank you. It is an honor and a privilege to be your pastor, and I appreciate you deeply. Please hear that. The second area that Paul takes time to thank the church in Philippi, the Philippians, and show gratitude. It's found in chapter 2 of Philippians. And Paul points out how they have served out of joy, not out of grumbling or out of a sense of duty. And he sort of unpacks this in Philippians 2:17 when he says this, "Your faith makes you offer your lives as a sacrifice in serving God." The word there, offer, it means, at the root of it, it's like this concept of volunteering. Because see, what Paul is thanking the church at Philippi for is for volunteering, for serving. But more specifically, he's pointing out that no one forced them to do this. They did it because they wanted to, because they chose to. And can I just ask you a question again to think about? Who in your life has served you or continually serves you, and not because they had to, but because they chose to? And have you thanked them? Right? Do they know that you're grateful? Are you thanking the people at home or at work or in your neighborhood for serving you, for helping you, for encouraging you? Being remembered for being a grateful person, it means humbling yourself and stopping and taking the time to look somebody in the eye and say, "I noticed what you did. Thank you. Thank you for doing that for me." It means so much. And when you do that, it'll do wonders for them. But I'm going to say this again. It's going to also open up your soul for a greater capacity to love. You know, there are so many people that serve that way voluntarily at Northway. It would be impossible for me to even touch on the different areas of serving and the many hundreds and even thousands of people that serve. And if I could, maybe just one thing, you know, with Kids Gig just wrapping up here at our Wexford campus, and now over the next 2 weeks going to happen at Sewickley and Oakland and East End and in Dormont. Let me just say, for all of you that served and that will serve, thank you. And thank you for serving our kids and our families. Thank you for each person that serves in these ministries. You know, and I just want to pause and just get personal. I want to express a special thanks to many of you that have poured into my own daughters over these last 12 years at Northway, Alyssa and Aaron. You know, people like Julia Dawson and Beth Ann Feldman and Kristen Tyson and many more that have loved my girls through middle school and high school. People like Linda Donaldson and Kelsey McCurry who are still pouring into my kids. If I could get real personal for a moment, being a pastor's kid has some incredible blessings, but man, it can be really difficult. Pastors' kids are under the microscope of the entire church and often their entire community. And so often people think, well, they're good. Like, look, they got Tina and look, they got Pastor Scott as their dad. They're good. Thank you for helping Tina and I. Seriously, we're so grateful for those that have served us by loving our girls. Northway, I'm so grateful for all of you that serve so faithfully and make Northway such an amazing place to call home. The third thing that Paul expresses gratitude, it's found in Philippians 4. Now just remember where he's at. He's in jail. His life is in the balance. And in Philippians 4, verse 10, he says this, "I rejoiced in the Lord greatly that now at length you have revived your concern for me, that you were indeed concerned for me, but you had no opportunity." And then skipping down to verse 14, "Yet it was kind of you to share my trouble. And you Philippians yourself know that in the beginning of the gospel, when I left Macedonia, no church entered into partnership with me in giving and receiving, except you only, even in Thessalonica. Well, you sent me help for my needs once again. Not that I seek a gift, but I seek the fruit that increases to your credit. I have received full payment and more. I am well supplied, having received from Epaphroditus the gift that you sent, a fragrant offering, a sacrifice acceptable and pleasing to God." The church at Philippi, what they did is they sent him resources and supplies and quite possibly a sizable offering while he was in jail, and he is thanking them. With his life hanging in the balance, he thanks them for their unselfish generosity. He says, thank you, man. You guys were concerned about me. Thank you. It was kind of you. Thank you. You sent help for my needs. Folks, who has been generous with you in the past or is doing so right now? Who has given you their time and their wisdom, their resources, or maybe even their money to help you? Are you expressing your gratitude? Have you recently paused, considered, and then seriously thanked someone for their generosity? I just want to say it again the third time. It's healing for your brokenness. It really is. If you can look around at the generosity of someone else towards you, it'll take your eyes off of your bitterness or negativity or pride, and it'll turn your focus on them. It will increase your capacity to love. You know, Paul is not throwing a pity party here or telling the church, well, it's about time you stepped up and gave me something. He's saying, thank you. I am grateful. And if I could just pause here, I just want to take a few minutes and thank you, Northway, all campuses, for your generosity, and give you just a couple updates. You know, we operate, you might not be aware of this, on what we call a fiscal budget calendar. So our financial year is actually coming to a close in 2 weeks at the end of June. Each quarter, your campus pastor, wherever you're worshiping today, gets up and he gives you sort of a quarterly report. And over the last couple of reports, if you've been here, we've updated on the fact that our year-end giving fell a little short of what we had planned for, and therefore we've been tracking somewhat behind in our plan. You also might not be aware of, about 4 or 5 years ago, we set in place a rigid set of financial disciplines, and that would ensure that we would carefully steward your giving. And so when you give, and I want to point this out, when you give in excess of our plan, and whenever the church staff has spent less in expenses than they planned, at the end of the year, we take that money, call that a surplus, and one of our financial disciplines kicks in. We take half of that and set it aside for our campus launch fund to sort of send and launch the next campus. We take half of that to invest in priority ministry initiatives or missional efforts that did not make it into our budget. So here's my update. You know, we went in to sort of the end of March being approximately about $135,000 or so behind plan, and we are now, midway through June, well over $100,000 in excess of plan. And I see some of you nodding, and there's probably some folks that are like, oh, that's nice. No, dude, that's unheard of. And it's not one big gift. It's not like somebody just dropped something. It was just an unbelievable amount of momentum over the last couple months. So what that means is at the end of the year, right now, if things sort of stay right there, we're going to be able to put over $100,000 into the campus launch fund to seed the next campus, and take $100,000 and do some ministry and missional efforts. Yeah, that is really awesome. Thank you for that. So here, know this. That you guys realize that when we launched our last campus, our Dormont campus, just a few months ago, we didn't do a special campaign. We didn't come to you and ask for that or do a fundraiser. We took the money that you had given, and we'd been saving it and set it aside, and we invested that to launch the next campus. And I get this question a lot. Scott, where's the next campus going to be? And I just want you to hear me on this. Like, there's no secret meeting going on where we like make sure the room isn't bugged, you know, and then we talk about it. We don't talk about much where we're going next because we don't want to say where we might be going. And if you live in that community, you get excited, and then for whatever reason we don't go there, you get disappointed. So that's why we don't talk about it much. But here's what I want you to know. Over the next 12 to 18 months, we've been praying about this a lot. Where is this next sum of campus launch fund? What are we going to do? What's the 6th campus, or where are we headed? Hear me on this. Here's what we really come to a decision on. We really feel 3 things. 1, we want to explore more permanent options in our Sewickley campus. 2, we want to begin a search for a larger space in Oakland. You guys realize they are maxed out, packed out of space. And 3, we've begun praying and talking about, is there is God doing some kind of a missional church partnership with Pastor Freedom in Homewood? So that's where we are now beginning to sort of focus our efforts and plan where we're going. So know that right now at the end of the year, it's so important because anything that comes in over and above our plan, boom, that's where it's headed. It's headed right there. So please hear me on this. Thank you for your generosity. From the leadership team at Northway, I need you to hear, we are so grateful for the way that you give so faithfully. So let me sort of move to like a closing argument or two, right? Some of you may be thinking to yourselves right now, I get it. I need to say thank you more. However, in your mind, you might be saying, Scott, that's really not much different than what my mom told me as a kid, say please and thank you. What's next week, Scott? Clean up your toys, right? You're thinking, I was thinking something was going to be a little bit more fierce or a little bit more gritty than grateful. So allow me to close with a thought or two, and then allow me to turn the grit volume up just a bit with your permission. So here we go. Why should I be grateful? Why would I want to be remembered as grateful? Because God has been so gracious to me. And let me turn the grit volume up a little bit on all of us. See, when we complain about our lives, when we are ungrateful for the blessings that we have, when we take for granted the people that God's placed in our lives, when we say, this is not fair, or when we forget to give God the credit, we have forgotten how gracious and faithful that He has been to us. For 400 years, the Israelites, God's chosen people, lived under the crushing weight of slavery in Egypt. They worked from morning till night under the whip of a taskmaster. They were abused. They were run down. They were barely surviving. And God sent Moses to them with a bag full of plagues, right? And not long after that, they were literally plundering Egypt. They were picking up everything they could carry out of there, and they were headed to the promised land, right? 1 million strong, with God leading them with this pillar of smoke by day and this pillar of fire by night. And literally within months of that exodus, in Numbers 11, verse 1, it says this, and the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. And when the Lord heard it, His anger was kindled. They didn't like the weather. They didn't like the food and the accommodations, and they grumbled. And what was God's response to their ungratefulness? He was angry. And when I read that, I say to myself, well, sure, God was angry. What a bunch of ungrateful whiners. Those chumps, they should have been incredibly grateful. I'm sure glad I'm not like that. Can I just turn up the grit volume with us all just a little bit more? See, then I pause and I wonder if I'm really any different than that group of people that were headed to the promised land. I wonder at times how ridiculous my complaining might sound to God. See, I believe when my posture is that of complaining and whining to God, it is as if I'm calling into question His love and His plan for me. Folks, we're not naturally grateful people. It doesn't come easily to most of us. And I don't want to be remembered as a complainer or a know-it-all. I want to be remembered as a grateful person. And if you grow in your gratefulness, I believe that chips will fall off your shoulders that you're carrying around. I believe that bitterness and pride will just dissolve away. I believe that your capacity to love will increase. Okay, so let's turn up the grit volume one more time, or maybe two more. The more you make your life about you, the more miserable of a human being that you are going to be. I'm sorry, there's just no way around that. The more that you remain under the banner of it's not fair and what about me, the more you remain under the banner of someone should be thanking me for all my awesomeness, man, the more miserable you are going to be. And that brokenness is going to be what frames what others see in you. So, if I can make a closing statement here before I wrap up. This is a little brutal. Grit going up. Show me an ungrateful Christian, and I will show you a Christian that has Jesus in their head and not in their heart. Because if we've really experienced the grace of God, then you will have an attitude of gratefulness towards God and towards others. You won't be able to help yourself. What Jesus did for me, he completely rewired the way I think about myself. I know that God is for me, that he will protect me and provide for me. I know that he is all I need. I know that I indeed can do all things through him who strengthens me. And that should compel me to show gratitude towards others. Some of you, some of us, we're just, if you're really honest, you just know you're not a very grateful person. And you've lived under this banner of I have been wronged, or under this banner as I must always be right. And be honest, it's left you exhausted. And you know something is missing in your life, and you are thirsty for something more. You know, C.S. Lewis in the Chronicles of Narnia, in the book The Silver Chair, there is this young girl in the wilderness, and she's literally dying of thirst. And the Christ figure, the lion, Aslan, he's standing between her and this river, this flowing river, if you've seen this. And he's telling her, come on over and take a drink from this. And she said, no, she won't come because she's afraid of him. And finally she says, forget it. I'll just find another river. And Aslan says this, and some of you need to hear this today, there is no other river. There is no other river. This is so many of us. Jesus Christ, the Son of God, he offered himself freely for our brokenness. He died this agonizing death on a cross voluntarily. And see, at this time, everyone thought the movie was over. The credits rolled and the screen went blank. It's like if you've gone to see one of these Marvel comic movies, right? I just went and saw Captain America not too long ago, right? And the credits roll and the screens go blank. But if you sit there and wait, you get this extra scene at the end. The credits rolled and the screen went blank, but on the third day, he arose again from the dead. And folks, he walked through locked doors to a group of people that knew him better than anybody else, that were remembering him, but they were remembering in a sense of hopelessness and loss, because all was lost. And he walked in and said, peace be with you. Man, just as I told you and just been predicted for thousands of years, I am here to restore your brokenness, to forgive you of sins. And all you have to do, it's all available to you, is believe. And folks, we didn't do anything to deserve that, and we can't do anything to earn it, but we sure should be grateful for it. Who you are at the core should be marked by your humility and your gratefulness to God for what he has done for you. Man, you can keep playing your cards, but I would encourage you to fold. You can keep looking for another river, but I'm telling you, there is not one. It starts with gratefully accepting the gift. And not just as head knowledge, it has to sink down deep into your soul. He lived for you. He died for you. He rose for you, and all you have to do is say thank you. So here's what I want to do. I want to give all of us at all of our campus just an opportunity to respond to that. If you've really never bent your knee and expressed your gratefulness for what Jesus Christ did, I want to give you an opportunity to do that right now. So I'd like everybody just to stand up across all of our campuses. And wherever you're at, your campus leader, if you could come up to the front. And here's what I want to do. Just let's all bow our heads and close our eyes. You know, no one looking around. This should just be a moment between you and God. And if that's you and you've really never bent that knee, you've never really humbled yourself to say, thank you, God, then just say this prayer, use your own words. It just goes something like this: God, I know I'm broken. Thank you for what you've done to restore me. Lord, forgive me of my sins. And this day, right now, I want to be in a relationship with you, Lord. I want to turn my life to you. I want to be grateful for what you've done. And with all heads bowed and no one looking around, if that's you, I just want you to raise your hand and look up front and agree with your pastor. So if that's you right now, just look up front and raise your hand.